very much for that and the fantastic speech you've just made. And what a fantastic sight this is here today. Burnley May Day. Beautiful day. The sun's coming back, you know. Politicians can always offer sun tomorrow. And what a great setting. And Peter, well done on organising this May Day rally. I've been here once before, a long time ago, and I try to go to May Day rallies every year all over the country. And I tell you this, I see it as the duty of a Labour leader to be at May Day rallies. Just as I will be at the Durham Miners Gala, the Burston, Toll Puddle and all the other great festivals of our movement. Because it's our movement that is really what we're about. It's what gives us our heart, it's what gives us our thought, it's what gives us our principles. And so you have on the platform here today, you have Julie, our wonderful MP, you have the other Julie, our wonderful MEP, you have Afzal, our wonderful MEP, and you have Clive here as our wonderful Police and Crime Commissioner. Our positions come because we're there to represent the principles and views of our movement and try and put them forward, but also understand where we came from. May Day celebrations begun in 1886 in Chicago in the USA. They begun there because the employers, the newly wealthy industrialists of the USA, hated the trade unions, tried to oppose the 8-hour day and tried to cut wages. The unions marched. They marched in Chicago that day. They didn't win everything that day. Indeed, the forces killed trade unionists in Chicago that day. But those that stood for the rights of workers then in the USA, in reality, were standing for the rights of workers all over the world. That in a period of growth of industrialization, the new wealth, the new knowledge, the new industries should lead to greater wealth for everybody, not just the few. And in a sense, it's all happening again, and I'll come back to that before I conclude. It's all happening again with the greater levels of inequality within our society. And May Day represents something very special. Yes, it's an historic pre-industrial festival of hope, of the start of spring, and joy of communities coming together. And it's become that in May Day rallies all over the world. Those that march for human rights, the right to speak, the right to expression, the right to practice your faith, the right to live in a human rights dominated society. People all around the world, yesterday and today, are marching for much the same thing. That is what brings us here today in Burnley, as it did in London yesterday, Glasgow, and all over this country. Trade unions are the lifeblood of our Labour movement. They helped to found our Labour movement, our Labour Party. I've been a trade unionist all my life, and I'll be a trade unionist till the day I die. I'm proud of the link between our party and the trade unions. And so in this period of growth of our party membership, we're now 500,000 members and supporters and 3 million affiliated unions, and I welcome the FBU back into affiliation during this year, and I hope other unions will follow suit. Because there's an awful lot at stake in our society at the moment. I'll give you an example. The Labour government after the Second World War faced the most terrible economic situation any government could possibly have faced. An economy in ruins, cities in ruins, people coming back from the war, and people homeless because of the war. What did that government do? Did it reduce taxation for the wealthiest in order to cut public expenditure for the poorest? Did it say that the success of 5 years of Labour government would be more belt tightening and more poverty? Or did they say the only way out of this crisis is to invest in the collective in society and invest in people, in housing, in education and in health? And that government's greatest achievement was the establishment of the National Health Service. And you read it today as they must have read it then, before I was born. The National Health Service Act that was passed through Parliament, which said quite simply, it is the duty of a society to ensure there is free health care for all, irrespective of their wealth or their poverty, as a human right. A huge development. But that service is under threat like it's never been under threat before. The Health and Social Care Act was nothing to do with health and social care. It was everything to do with cutting, everything to do with privatising, everything to do with top-down reorganisation of our NHS. 49% of all services due to go out to the private sector. Every hospital in the country facing a financial problem or crisis at the present time, having to deal with that by redundancies, by sales of buildings, by yet more privatisation. And then Jeremy Hunt decides the real cause of all the problems of healthcare in this country isn't inequality in healthcare, isn't poverty, it is apparently the junior doctors. Well, I say this, I only regret they're called junior doctors. They're not. They're highly qualified, very experienced people that keep all of us alive. So let the May Day message go out. Junior doctors, we're with you in your defence of our National Health Service. And we recognise that healthcare is best delivered as a team. It's a team of people. A surgeon can't do an operation on their own. A consultant can't see you and analyse your problem on their own. It requires a cleaner. It requires a porter. It requires somebody to keep the records. It requires somebody to look after the building. It requires the nurses, the support staff and everybody else. The NHS is a team of all those people. A team that works together to keep us well. And there is gross health inequality in our society. You can take a bus ride across any major city anywhere in Britain. A bus ride across Birmingham, Glasgow, Edinburgh, London, Liverpool, Manchester, any major city. You start in the leafy suburbs, where life expectancy is in the upper 80s. You move a bit further in, and it goes down. You move to the poorest, most overcrowded, insecure accommodation, and it's down to 60 or less. And you leave the city on the other side, and you get back up to the highlands of longer life expectancy. So, our health inequality, is it just bad luck? Or is it because we're not dealing with the fundamentals of inequality in our society? The housing crisis, the mental health crisis, and all the other issues that go with it. The NHS can deal with illness, but it can't deal with poverty, and it can't deal with bad housing. I mentioned the mental health crisis, and I take this very, very seriously. In our lifetime, 1 in 4 of us, a quarter of us, are going to experience severe stress, mental health illness, or mental health condition. Far too many young men commit suicide because they feel unable to talk to anybody about the crisis they're going through. Far too many go through a mental health stress and crisis all on their own, because we've allowed a stigma to develop within our society of saying, it's okay, you can make jokes about it. Just make jokes, it doesn't matter. Well, it matters to the person that's going through that crisis. It matters to all of us. And so to the unions that have set up stress and anti-bullying hotlines, thank you very much. Yeah. Yeah. To the health service workers that do their best to deal with the crisis, thank you very much. And our part has been, I had the opportunity of appointing a shadow cabinet last September, and I wanted to make a point here. So I asked Luciana Berger to be our shadow cabinet level minister responsible for mental health policy. That appointment alone has begun to change the narrative, the talk and the music concerning mental health. Let this message go out here today. We are strong enough, proud enough to care, to support and ensure that people going through mental health crises do not go through it on their own. It requires the rest of us to help and support. I mentioned the housing crisis, and there's so much I could say. I remember discussing with your former MP and a great friend of mine, Peter Pike, when he was the MP for this borough. He was elected at the same time as me in 1983, the issues of the housing crisis. They are different in different parts of the country. I fully understand that. I fully understand there is greater house demand in some places than others. But I tell you this, a fundamental is that we need to ensure that everybody is decently housed. Is it right, necessary or proper that in 21st century Britain there's an increase in street homelessness in every major city? There's an increase in overcrowding. There are councils being forced to sell off high-value council properties because the government has ordained it. Should we not approach the housing crisis by ensuring that local authorities do have the resources to create the virtuous circle of building where it's needed, creating the jobs that come from the whole supply stream of development in housing, to give our children decent, secure, good housing, rather than in too many places growing up in 6-month tenancies in the private rented sector, in inadequate, insecure accommodation. That plays on the minds of all of us. I want to be part of a Labour government that deals with the housing crisis in the same way historic Labour governments have. But all this requires an education system and an economy to deal with it. The education system is best dealt with, I think, by the family of local education. The family of education through local government, supporting the schools and the colleges and the add-ons that collective provision can give, the music, the art, the theatre, all those things, and the outdoor activities that children can get from a collective of schools. But it's not the Tory way, is it? Oh, no, 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 no. They preach localism and practice centralism. They preach democracy and practice diktat. Why are they now instructing every school in the whole country to become an academy, whether they want to or not? I don't see education as a commodity to be bought and sold and competed for. I see education as a responsibility of the entire community. And so we will oppose their top-down academisation. We will support the idea of the family of local education provision. It's good for the children, good for the students, and good for the community. But the key issue, and the key issue we have to face, is this, is the economy. The economic crisis, the banking crisis of 2000.